Hello and welcome to Gas It Out. We are coming to you after the Thai Grand Prix, the opening Grand Prix of the 2026 MotoGP World Championship. My name's Gavin and Neil, and I am actually still in Thailand. On the video version, you might be able to see behind me, I'm still in Bangkok because, yes, I'm one of those, as many people in the paddock were, who were on Qatar Airways. And unfortunately, I'm not coming back. We're recording this on Tuesday after the Grand Prix, and I'm not going to be back home until Wednesday. Great. Anyway, already back at home are my illustrious colleagues who have enjoyed spending the weekend with in Buriram. Neil Hodgson and Sylvain Gintoli are with me. I'm heading back on economy class tonight. You two both flew back in first class. First of all, Neil Hodgson, how are you? How's the jet lag?
Yesterday was tough because obviously you fly through the night. So you work all day, fly through the night, and it's difficult
on
sometimes.
Sunday.
On Sunday night, it's difficult sometimes, you know, when you've sat right at the front of the plane and people are trying to offer you massages and foot rubs, and there's only so much you can eat and drink. And in the end, I was slightly nauseous. 3 bottles of champagne. So it wasn't pleasant at all. But do you know what? I toughed it out. I kept my head down. I just slog on, and here I am.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for making it to the podcast. Sylvain, how is your jet lag now after a first night's sleep back home?
Beautiful. Slept really well, and with Neil, we were in the same plane actually, so it was very nice to travel straight away. Actually, we did feel a bit sorry for you, Gav. I mean, what a nightmare. And so, like most of the, well, not most, but loads in the paddock have been stranded as well. So I mean, some guys are not coming back until Thursday, which is tough. But I suppose that's what it is. We did have a great weekend, though, didn't we? Absolutely brilliant.
What a weekend!
Full of surprises.
Yeah, so much for us to get our teeth into in this first episode. Talk about Aprilia, what they've done over the winter. KTM, we'll discuss Pedro Acosta, the new championship leader. First time one of the orange bikes has led in the Premier class. And what's going on with Ducati? How do they sum up their weekend in MotoGP? Loads of other stuff for us to talk about as well. Plight of Yamaha, Moto2 and Moto3. But maybe first of all, lads, we should start talking about the weekend as a whole, as an opening Grand Prix. What do you think of the Thai Grand Prix as an opener? It was full of eventful occurrences on the racetrack, but also what would you make of it as an event, shall we say?
Well, let's start with last year. It wasn't great. This year, the exact opposite. It was incredible. I mean, we got probably one of the best sprint races I think I've ever seen. Obviously, controversy at the end, which we all like. Great talking point. We then moved to Sunday. We had the closest ever Moto3 finish. I mean, as we commentated, Gav went over the line. I'm like, I think it's a dead heat. After that, the Moto2 race, obviously far from ideal with red flags, but a 7-lap sprint, actually, thankfully no one got injured. So 7-lap sprint, exciting. And then the MotoGP race, there were lots going on. So as far as weekends go, I'm going to say it's probably one of the best opening rounds I think I can remember.
And what about you, Sylvain? What do you think of Thailand as an opening race? It sounds like, and we discussed it over the weekend as well when we were on TNT Sports, but it sounds like Qatar will be the host of the opener next year, going back to the start. What do you make of Buriram as a place and Thailand as an opening Grand Prix? I mean, really good crowd there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great atmosphere. It was brilliant racing as well, and we all in all, I think we had actually one of the best weekends ever all together at the track. It was great. So I mean, I do like Qatar because it's a special setup, and obviously the night race makes it really, really special. But the atmosphere this weekend was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I felt like this weekend was actually pretty special. Not only because we got some great racing on track, it just felt good all in all.
We should talk about the occurrences on track. Marco Bezzecchi won the race. He becomes the first Aprilia man to win 3 Grand Prix in a row after he won the last 2 of 2025. I mean, he showed a lot of promise, didn't he, in pre-season testing, Neil? But Did we honestly? Well, clearly you and I didn't, and we didn't put him in our predictions to be on the podium at the Grand Prix. No, we didn't. Okay, Sylvain, thanks for pointing it out. Yeah,
You did, Sylvain. We know you did,
You
Sylvain,
did?
because you might have mentioned it once or twice since.
Yeah,
that's all we've heard about. Actually, you keep sending the message.
Exactly.
Why didn't you two? Why are you two such idiots for not putting him in your top three? So maybe some of us were taken by surprise, but everything was there that we saw during testing. Everything promised to this. I think, from my point of view, I wasn't just aware how much they were getting that rear hard tyre working where Ducati weren't able to, Neil. And let's face it, 4 Aprilias in the top 5 on the race and by the end of the weekend in the championship just shows at Nawali, it's a job done good.
Yeah, they've improved the bike. But we did see it last year at the rounds where the heat-treated tyre, if you think at the end of last season in Indonesia, we saw Aprilia have a huge advantage. I mean, Marco Bezzecchi could carry corner speed at that round, so much so that he eventually ended up, well, on lap 1, if you remember, he ran into the back of Marquez because he could, for whatever reason, they can get that tyre to work. They can find grip where no one else can. They can make the bike turn. With us, with TNT Sport this year, we've got that the new tool where we can overlay laps. We can really analyze things a little bit better. Thanks to Chaz Davis, we've got Chaz Davis working with the team. He's developed that software, and when we overlaid,
he gives it to teams, doesn't he? So he works with some teams because it's so such an important bit of kit. That's why we are lucky to have that, I have to say.
Yeah, and if anyone hasn't seen it, go on all the TNT Sports socials. You'll be able to see it. But when you looked at that, you could see Bezzecchi especially. He uses his body a lot, but he could turn the bike and stand it up and fire it out of the corners. And to be honest, I might surprise you with what I'm going to say. I think he had a terrible weekend because he had 0.3, 0.4 of a second in his pocket. He should have won both races. It was a huge mistake on Saturday. 3 crashes, crashed out the sprint. And you come away and everyone's going, oh, this is amazing. And you think, do you know what? We're not going to use that heat-treated tyre that many times. You have to capitalise if you're the number 1 rider in the factory team. So, I mean, it obviously didn't have a horrible weekend, but you can't make mistakes like that if you want to be MotoGP world champion. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's fair to say, isn't it, Sylvain, that it was the whole shot actually in the second race that won him it, wasn't it? Because if we looked at the start in the sprint race, it was Marc Marquez who got to the whole shot first, messed up his race and almost forced him into that mistake that we saw in the sprint. Do you agree with Neil then that actually Bezzecchi will be kicking himself after what happened on Saturday in the sprint?
Yeah, it's definitely a missed opportunity because the gap was so big. I mean, he had such an advantage in pace. He looked comfortable. He could produce the lap time at will. He was good with the long race simulation as well. So yeah, he had pace on tap and he didn't use it. He basically made a mistake under Marquez's pressure in the sprint. So yeah, I do agree with Neil on that point. It's definitely a lot of points that have gone, 12 points that have gone that he's never going to see back this year, unfortunately, and it was all down to Marc Marquez putting the pressure. So Marc straight away knew that he didn't have the ultimate pace, but as Marc, that's what he does. He puts the pressure, had a good start, so was able to get into turn 1 in first position, and then was sort of like dive bombing. And even though Bezzecchi had the pace, he dive bombed him a couple of times, and that put a pressure on Bezzecchi. Bezzecchi immediately thought, I'm at the front, I need to make the gap immediately, and overdid it in possibly his favorite corner of the track, which was turn 8. Yeah, I mean, he on the ghost, what we call the ghost, the ghosting technology, so where you can overlap the laps, which is incredible. And like Neil said, yeah, please go and check the TNT Sports socials. It's unreal. I mean, what a tool. Absolutely brilliant to analyze. And we could see Bezzecchi in that particular corner had so much advantage, but he overdid it. And often you do that as a rider. You've got your corners where you feel really confident and comfortable, and that's the corners where you're going to push the extra mile, and when you shouldn't. So he made a typical mistake, and yeah, missed out on a lot of points.
And it wasn't just Bezzecchi, was it? Jorge Martin had a fabulous ride, a really, really good battle that Martin had with Pedro Acosta and Marc Marquez when we were on the Sunday. But also Trackhouse with Raul Fernandez and Ayagura, both of them scoring decent results. Agura repeating what he did last year. But Fernandez, 2 podiums on a race weekend. I mean, it's just dreamland, isn't it, for Noale?
Yeah, it is. It is, because as we're well aware, they've been in Ducati's shadow for so long. And obviously these two factories, they're not that far apart, are they, Gav? In Italy, I mean, but there's...
Not when you compare it to, what between there and Japan, for example.
Exactly.
It's about 2 hours.
It's just around the corner.
No,
yeah, it's 2 hours. Exactly. It's 2 hours. So, and you can imagine if you're Aprilia, they're sick to death of Ducati. Everyone's been living in Ducati's shadow for quite some time, so it's really pleasing to see obviously the gap has come down, and obviously this weekend the Aprilia was clearly the bike to be on. But you only have to go into pit lane, like obviously we're fortunate enough to do, and you stand and look at that Aprilia, and if you study it, it is so extreme. The aero, the attention to detail on that bike. The seat unit itself, I mean, I always say the Aprilia is my favourite looking bike. It's a work of art, but it's gone even more extreme this year, and it's incredible. And it's clearly working. They found top speed. It's continuing to turn what looks like better than any other bike, and it's outstanding.
On the video, those watching on YouTube or other video platforms will have seen pictures there of the aero. It was a big talking point over the weekend. The aero scoops down the side of the motorcycle. I know that isn't the be all and end all. It just shows, though, to me, if nothing else, that the relentless push, the relentless drive that they are moving on. And the fact is, isn't it, chaps, that the concessions, the fact that you can test these things more, that, you can run your test riders that little bit more. You've got more tyres available to do it. It's testament to the concessions working. Is that right?
Well, for Aprilia, they are on par this year with concessions with KTM and Honda, but they are clearly now the leader. The leader in the aero department. You can tell that's where they made the gains. And again, in Thailand, they come up with this. So there is a rule in MotoGP where you're not allowed aero that moves. So anything that's like active aero is forbidden. And so there's no two ways about it. You can't have anything that moves under pressure. You can't have anything that moves automatically with system. And they came up with this system where it is an aero that is being modified while the riders are on track. But it is actually modified by the rider's position. You see this vent there on the side of the fairing. So when the rider tuck in the straight, their elbows sort of plug it and modify the aero of the bike to give it a little bit more top speed, to change a bit the cooling, to change the airflow around the bike. And when they're not tucked in and it's not plugged in the corners, what we think is that the air is then redirected onto the side of the bike and onto the back of the bike to give it a little bit more downforce and a bit more rear grip. I mean, it is very, very, very clever. And for now, they are the first one to come up with it. It'd be interesting to see if the other manufacturers are going to follow them because of that clear advantage they had this weekend.
They will, won't they? Because that's what we've always seen. And you say like now Aprilia are ahead of the aero race. They sort of have been for the last 12 months. It feels like with the ground effect. If you think they were the first to really throw a lot into that in that direction, and then everybody's jumped on the back of it. So you do feel like this is the future. We will see more of this from the other manufacturers.
Yeah, and that is motor racing, isn't it? In a nutshell, when people see other people having success with it, they go with it. Ducati with the wings, and what did that help actually? First of all, help them with their front end, help them to get that turning. Remember Andrea Dovizioso or Casey Stoner or whoever talking about the turning, help them with that sort of thing. And the wings, the aero, all part of it now. And if this is something they're seeing some success with the scoop under the bike, the ride height devices. They will all have to go down that route. We know we're getting rid of the ride height devices. But, this is such an integrated part. It's not something that would be affected by the reduction in size of aero that we're going to see coming in 2027.
No, it's hardly going to change next year. I think everyone's going to be shocked when they see the bikes, because people are saying, "Oh, well, they're banning a lot of the aero." They're not. They're just making the window a little bit smaller, and there's not a lot. Is it 50 mil narrower or whatever?
Yeah.
They will essentially still look the same. One thing I want to add, and I laughed so much this weekend when I was in pit lane looking at that Aprilia. The seat unit is bizarre. There is that much aero. It's huge. It's wide. What I'll do is, at the next round, I'm going to film it so I can show everybody. But it made me think of Julian Ryder. I remember talking to Julian. I don't know what year it was. It might have been 2015, and it was the beginning of the aero race. And I think it was his exact words were about letting the genie out of the bottle. Like, obviously, you can't get it back in. And at the time, I'm like, I'm not too sure. We'll see where this goes. And look, sort of 10 years on, you look at these spaceships, because they're not motorcycles as I know it, as any of us know it. They're ridiculous. They are so complicated, but they're also incredible. When I say ridiculous, you just can't believe how they've evolved. Like, if you think, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but if you think of a motocross bike, you look at a motocross bike and they look exactly the same as they did 15 years ago. You look at a MotoGP bike and it is chalk and cheese, and it is incredible, and I love it. It's the way they've evolved it's mind blowing.
Well, it's sort of, you both raced and won in World Superbike, and even they've got them coming in there in the aero front of things. But still, these are now prototypes in the extreme, aren't they? These things, they could go to the moon. That's what they feel like, don't they? They do
exactly.
Like they are the sort of things that could take off given half a chance. I mean, it is the opposite of taking off, which is what it's all about, isn't it? It's getting them stuck to the ground. But it has been such part and parcel of that. And you mentioned the ghosting before. The Aprilia sticking to the ground and able to turn through the corners, just having that turning ability. In terms of the World Championship, then, Pedro Acosta, it is, though, who leads on a KTM, the first man to do that on one of the orange bikes, which is fantastic to see, isn't it? That they are right at the top of the standings by 7 points from Marco Bezzecchi, 32 to 25. Raul Fernandez, he has 23 points behind, with Jorge Martin in fourth spot, Ayagura in fifth. Brad Binder then in sixth, and the top Ducati back in seventh place with Fabio Di Gianantonio on 12, Marc Marquez in eighth on 9 points. Yeah, the Ducati's not there, but we have to talk about KTM because they are the championship leaders, lads, with Pedro Acosta victorious in the sprint, second in the main race. It was just a weekend that, we had our preview. Did any of us expect to see KTM and Pedro Acosta at the head of the championship heading into Brazil, Silva?
No, absolutely not. Well, in the preview, we hardly mentioned them. We were not expecting them that competitive.
Well, I think that might say more about us.
Yeah. I mean,
the experts.
They didn't show their cards as well in Sepang at the test, and then again at the test in the week before the race in Buriram, and they've made such progress. And the bike looks different. The KTM the last few years, for example, has always been the fastest bike in a straight, and we have seen during this weekend, head-to-heads with Pedro Acosta versus Marc Marquez versus Marco Bezzecchi in the straight, and the KTM was actually a little bit slower than the other two. They produced a lap time in a different way, and so they've changed their philosophy. It looks like they've gone heavier, on the aero side. They're sacrificing a little bit of top speed, but because it's not come from the engine, because the engine is frozen and it's the same engine as last year. And they've got this stability, and Pedro Acosta is able to literally riding the wheels of it. It's unbelievable what he did. He was so aggressive, but the bike looks so nice and planted. So it was I'd say the big surprise, even though Aprilia was a surprise as well. Seeing the KTM at the sharp end like this and Pedro Acosta leading the championship, for me, is the biggest surprise of this weekend.
Yeah, at a
and
track
there was,
last year, they were awful, weren't they, Gav? If you remember last year,
yeah,
they were miles off. So that said, I feel like I want to underline the fact that it's more Pedro than KTM. If you look, and the other KTMs, well, Brad Binder didn't have a bad weekend, but he was 12 seconds behind Pedro after the race. You've got Anea Bastianini was 18 seconds behind Pedro, and Maverick, who had a terrible weekend, was over 30 seconds behind. So obviously, it looks like the KTM has improved, but Pedro Acosta this weekend, I know he's had other brilliant races. In fact, I remember, let's think of Indonesia last year. He was incredible there when he was like a bit of a roadblock and he overperformed. But this weekend, I almost felt like it was a bit of a coming of age. This was the time that he proved to everyone that he is the next champion coming through, taking it to Marquez, making Marc ride to his absolute limit and over it. And obviously, we'll have to talk about that last corner incident at some point during this podcast. But I think Pedro was just incredible.
Yeah, we will get onto that penalty in just a moment. We're going to take a little breather for now, but when we come back, what's going on with Ducati, the Marc Marquez weekend, and also who had the best carpaccio? Welcome back to Gas It Out. No, you are not listening to a food podcast. We will be talking about beef carpaccio later on, but we've got other matters to attend to, and that's KTM and Pedro Acosta, who lead the World Championship on 32 points after that opening round. And there's one thing that happened, Sylvain, with Pedro is his pace got quicker as the race went on. Okay, everyone tailed off at the end. We'll get onto that in a second and what was happening with some of the tyre issues that we saw later on. But they've almost, upended their race. And whereas Pedro was steady at the start, he could dose it out and have more to offer in the second half of that race when he was able to chase down Raul Fernandez. What do you think KTM have been able to do?
Well, they've. It was interesting to talk with his crew chief Paul Treverton after the race, and he actually gave us quite a lot there. So it's a mix of things, but one of them being that the weakness that they had last year was that the bike wasn't turning very well, and because of that, Pedro Acosta could sort of override the bike for a few laps. And but then after when the grip started to drop, he was really struggling to then turn and get the bike out of the turns, and that's where we're losing efficiency. Now it looks like they've really improved the turning, and when you improve the turning, you're going to improve your rear grip, because you don't need to rely so much on that rear grip to come out of the turns. The bike naturally turns better. So yeah, Pedro was still able to be aggressive and to use his sort of trademark riding style where he's very strong in the braking zones and really strong in the trail braking phase. But now he's got mid-turn turn, and the bike naturally wants to come out the corner better, and that allows him to keep the tire fresher and to keep rhythm during the whole race. So yeah, on a track like in Buriram that really abuses the rear tire, that overheats the rear tire, that really it's a massive workout for that rear tire. It looks like the bike now, the DNA of the KTM naturally is much more friendly mid-turn, and that was the big key for the weekend for them.
It's great for the championship, isn't it? We've got Aprilia on top in the main race. We've got KTM on top of the championship. It's the first non-Ducati to lead the championship since Thailand 2022. Who was that? Do you remember who it was?
Dobby?
No, 22.
Oh, sorry.
Do you remember who the last non-Ducati to lead the championship was, Sylvain?
I don't remember it, no.
Oh, hang on, let me think.
I'll give you a clue then. Thailand was 3 rounds to go in the championship after we left Thailand in 2022. God, the silence is deafening here. You know this is a podcast. You know
Fabio.
that people... Fabio Quartararo.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even Aprilia. It wasn't
that's a
KTM.
Gav, can you edit that so we just don't look as how embarrassing? Especially when
things have changed for Yamaha.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get onto Yamaha a bit later on, but it was Fabio Quartararo by 2 points from Pecco Bagnaia, if you remember that season.
I remember that.
Not.
Yeah. Now I've told you, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
But it just shows that the times are changing. You've got to give credit, haven't you, to the concessions and the way they've worked, the way they've brought everyone together. It's what we want. And now there's a bit of an unknown heading to the next round. And there's one thing that ties all of these issues together, whether it be Aprilia and how they're working with the tyre, Pedro, how they've developed the tyre, and Ducati. We've got to talk about Ducati, the way they struggled with that hard casing rear tyre. Now, is that the story of the weekend as far as Ducati was concerned? It felt like Davide Tardozzi, that was him. We'll get onto the tyre rim issue for Marquez in a second, but it feels like to me they haven't got the head around it. And the fact is, when we head to Brazil in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time, they're going to have a hard casing tyre because it's been taken there because they're not sure what the surface is going to be like. Is that a concern for Ducati? Is it something that might carry on actually beyond that into the USA and into the remainder of the season? How much of a worry is it at this moment in time? Neil?
I'd say, obviously, if they take the hard casing to the next round in Brazil, that it is going to be a concern. It's going to be a worry. I had a really good catch-up with Davide Tardozzi after the race. We interviewed him on TNT Sports, but he was hanging around for a bit first. And it's always funny. They are the conversations when you're not on camera where you can have a 5-minute chat. You get all the truth. And what I took away from it was, he basically said, we are dumbfounded. We don't know what's happened this weekend. Last weekend at the test, we had similar comments from all the riders. We were quite confident. We'd got that tyre working. We'd got a bit more life out of it. And he said, we've come here literally 1 weekend later. There'd been a lot of rain, so there's no rubber down. And also, when you've got the other bikes in the other classes with the Pirelli rubber, that can make the sensation, the feeling for the riders different. But what I took away from it, so he said all that, and I thought, it's funny, I've never heard anyone from Ducati use that line, that excuse. Think about all the other manufacturers. A number of times we've heard Honda say, oh, well, we came from the test and we felt really confident and we've just seemed really lost. Ducati never have said that, but I believe what Davide Tardozzi said. He said, all the riders are saying the track feels different. And we commented on watching Marc Marquez in the early sessions. He did not look right at all. I think part of that is still down to his shoulder, which he's openly admitted. But it almost wasn't a nice watching Marc look uncomfortable again, because we know what he's been through, that the horror of what he's had to go through, to almost be back, not quite at square one, but it's going to be a building process for him. So I don't think we can get too carried away. We can't say Ducati's completely lost, but it certainly isn't the weekend they expected, and it certainly isn't the weekend we all expected, is it?
Not at all. Let's talk about the sprint first of all, though, because, actually, maybe even qualifying, Sylvain, because that lap that Marc Marquez pulled out to be within a tenth, of Marco Bezzecchi changed his weekend, didn't it? Because that meant when we had the sprint start and he was able to get the whole shot in front of Marco Bezzecchi, we talked about it before, how it upset Bez's rhythm, but it almost eased Marc into it. He really slowed up the pace in the race there. And actually, whether you agree with the penalty or not that we got, we'll get onto that in a second. He showed Marc Marquez, didn't he, in the sprint format?
Yeah, and in the qualifying, well, he did a Marc Marquez. We know that he's able to pull rabbits out of the hat, permanently. That's what he does. That's Marc Marquez riding. Even though he's on the back foot, things are not working quite well with the bike and the tires. Even though he's still got that injury that he's carrying into that first race and start of season, he's able to make it count when it matters. So yes, Marc Marquez was on the back foot during the whole weekend. He tried and work at race pace and so on. When it matters in qualifying, he nearly got home with a new lap record. I mean, he was really, really close to Bezzecchi, front row start position, and then when it mattered again in the sprint, he was able to do the whole shot. And that was his plan. That was his strategy. He knew he didn't have the pace to win the race outright versus Bezzecchi. And he started the race to try and upset him, whole shot. That was his plan. And then as soon as Bezzecchi came past, have another go straight away. Try and disturb his rhythm and try and get in the way, slow down the race. and try and win the race in that way. And he's done that in the past. Last year, for example, in Assen, he was not the fastest rider and still managed to win the races because of his tactics. So I mean, he's a tremendous competitor and very, very tough to fight against. And his plan worked in the sprint. Even though he wasn't the fastest rider on track, he took loads of risk. I mean, the move on Pedro Acosta was pretty tasty, and he went for it and almost came home with the win.
And this is where I think it's interesting because we've talked about how Ducati haven't had the great weekend. Marc, you mentioned they didn't look comfortable. Neil said before, didn't look right any point of the weekend. Despite that, he probably should have won the sprint, or he put himself within. He had to give it away in the final corner. Let's talk about the penalty, shall we? And that move into the final corner from Marc Marquez on Pedro Acosta. Now, over the racing weekend, the both of you agreed with Simon Crafar and the decision that Simon made about calling it. If you're watching on the video version, we've got some close-ups of what happened in that final corner. You can see a little bit further through the corner how Marc was on the wider line, and obviously that was deemed to be a penalty. Have either of you changed your opinion about what happened in that incident?
Well, obviously, Gav, at the time, me and you were commentating on it live, and you have to make a snap decision. But that's your gut. That's your years of experience. That's using all the information that's being an ex-racer. That's being in that position. That's being in that one of those positions where you are releasing the brake, knowing you're going to make contact with someone, knowing it's going to be a dirty move. So we've got all that experience. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we make decisions, me and Sylvain, and you look back and then you see a different camera angle and you think, do you know what? I might have got that slightly wrong. This call is bloody close. I mean, it's as close as it's going to get. Is it a penalty? Isn't it? They're not always going to be clear cut, and this was one of them. I have watched it again. I've probably watched it about 20 or 30 times, and I've watched it from every angle. And I'm sticking by my first call. I think it was a penalty. What I said, obviously, when we were talking about it on air, the beauty is it was a penalty. It was drop one position. That's a long lap penalty. It's not a race ban. It's not huge. Marc received the smallest penalty that actually the stewards can give. But what the stewards are trying to achieve, Simon Crafar is leading it, is safer racing. We are trying to prevent silly lunges where, if you go back, and we don't have to go back too far, I was thinking back of certain races, but let's go back to the 90s. I mean, Loris Capirossi won a world championship by literally riding through his teammate Tetsuya Harada. Watch it back. He came from 10 meters back. It's the most
downtown
horrendous,
Buenos Aires.
Yeah, it's the most horrendous racing pass I've ever seen. I mean, how Capirossi didn't get banned for 6 months, it was that bad. Back then, we didn't have stewards, so that was allowed, and he won a world championship. Moving forward, we've had different levels of stewarding, but even only 2 years ago, we saw Jorge Martin lose a race to Enea Bastianini at Misano. It was a last lap pass. There was contact. Both riders ended up off the track, and nothing was done about it. So if you're a rider, you want to be protected. The riders want to be protected. And essentially, that's what Simon's doing. As a race fan, if you're a complete neutral sat at home, you don't really care. You don't really care. You want to see people get smashed into, and you want to see, because that's entertainment. But at the end of the day, you have to think about the line of safety, and that's why Simon Crafar, I think, is doing a fantastic job. And his opinion was Marc's just over the line there, so he dealt with it. He made Marc drop a position, and I think it was the right decision.
Sylvain, have you got anything to add to that one? I'd ask you at home as well, at Gas It Out Pod on Instagram or on YouTube. If you've got any comments, fire them into us. We got a lot over the weekend, people coming to us. Nethercott said to 99152, said not much in it, but just about the right decision. There was one comment that I saw someone sent me, which was from Scott Suttle. He said, I noticed on the replays when Marc left the second to last corner, his bike seemed to spin up a lot. Do you guys think Marc was lured into thinking that Pedro had lost drive? What do you think, Silva? Anything to add to what Neil had to say?
Well, everything that Neil said, I thought was right, and I think, you know, the way the stewards are looking at it is that there's multiple things there. The first thing is that Marc came from a long way behind in the braking zone, and you know, the pass was like a clean pass was never on, put it that way. Then the second thing is that there was a little bit of contact, and even though it was hard to see at first, both riders in the press conferences after they both confirmed it. There's the fact that Marc misses the apex by a mile and just managed to stay on track. The fact that Pedro Acosta had to go take evasive action because of the contact and had to go wide and basically run off the track. He was lucky it was tarmac there. It wasn't gravel, but he had to go off the track. So I think the decision for me makes sense, and I thought it was great that they took a decision really fast and they were able to apply it before the end of the race. So we didn't have like a, you know, I hate. There's nothing more than I hate that a race that finishes and then a later penalty that then changes the order. I think that's terrible. So when it can be avoided, it's always a plus, and that was done. I mean, they made the decision and sent the message to Marc Marquez on his dash within a minute, which is great. And you know, times in the, you know, when you see in a race like that, the time go really, really fast. So they did a very quick call there. So yeah, for me, the decision was correct. It's true that I can see both sides, and I fully understand people are saying, let them race, you know, let them have a go. This is spoiling the racing, and that makes sense as well. But like Neil said, it's the responsibility of the stewards to preserve the riders, to ensure safety for the riders, and also to ensure precedence. So, you know, since Simon Crawford arrived at his role at the stewards, he's been consistent. He's been, and this will set a precedent that the riders then know. They know now they can't do this and get away with it. So they'll still put some moves, and they're happy to race hard, but they know that coming from really, really far downtown and making contact and running another rider off the track is not on. And like Neil said, it was a very small penalty, one place drop, which Marc could have potentially let Pedro pass and then have another go in that last turn within the last lap. So yeah, I thought that was dealt with loads of efficiency and in the correct way.
Hey, I was thinking about it when I was watching it. I actually went through my head at the time when he had to give up the position. And I saw him sit up, and I knew it threw Pedro Acosta, didn't it? And Pedro was a bit confused. If Marc had just let him past, you know, for that second, and then just fired it out of the corner, and imagine it'd have been like that 3,000th of a second that we saw in Moto3. Imagine that. That'd have been more controversy on top of it.
It could have.
The one thing, it almost could have happened because Pedro had sat up that much. The one thing is, that is the first. When we get on to then Sunday in the race, first podium without a Ducati since the 2021 British Grand Prix. Okay, on the podium that day, I'm going to ask you again if you know. Do you know who was on the podium? Do you know who it was? British Grand Prix, Silverstone. Yeah, that's the British Grand Prix.
Was it Rossi?
No,
it was it Alex Rins, Marquez?
Alex Rins was second.
Yeah,
the winner was Fabio Quartararo. Rins was second, and Aleix Espargaro was third on the Aprilia. Jack Miller was fourth on the Ducati. The point I'm about to get to with this is there was no backup for Ducati. Pecco Bagnaia wasn't there all weekend. Fabio Di Giannantonio was 16 seconds behind Marco Bezzecchi in Sunday's race. Where's the cavalry?
Yeah,
for Ducati.
We thought they were going to be. Well, we thought this year, they got it wrong a little bit last year with the 2025 factory bike. Only Marc could use it properly. All the troubles with Pecco Bagnaia. Di Giannantonio was up and down as well. So we thought, well, for 2026, they are going to destroy everybody because they will put that package all together, come back to some of the setup from 2024 that worked really well for Alex Marquez last year, and ciao tutti. And actually, well, for this round anyway, with this tire, it's completely the opposite. I'm really surprised that they struggled that much,
I
and
am,
all of
I
them.
am, but I'm not. There's 42 races to go,
Yeah.
and it's not that I always feel like I'm always going to say it's not because I used to race for Ducati, but if I'm a betting man, I'm going all in on Ducati winning the Constructors' Championship and the World Championship. So I'm not getting carried
So
away.
you're doubling down at this stage.
I'm doubling down.
Even after what's
Absolutely.
happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The odds have increased.
What about you,
I'm going
Sylvan?
in.
Are you changing your prediction?
No, because the Aprilia looks so good, and Pedro Acosta looks so good as well. I think they're gonna have Ducati's got a lot. They've got a lot of work to do. And
So you
I do
think,
think
Sylvan, sorry to interrupt. So you think Ducati aren't going to be the Constructors' Champion, and you don't think they're going to win the World Championship?
I think there may be one man that can save them, but I think that they are not on target with what's been happening the last few years. I mean, we were thinking, we've been talking about Ducati Cup for years now.
Yeah.
This was the Aprilia Cup, and
I can feel a wager coming on here, Sylvan.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to relieve you of a little bit of money throughout the weekend during the Moto2 race. I've had to take a little bit off here. I just feel like, I don't know, these first class flights are not going to pay for themselves. So I think we might need to have a little chat about this.
You also do have a fair bit of money saved up, because over the racing weekend, I paid for dinner one night. I think Michael Laverty paid another night. And then the other nights you stayed in and had KFC. So let's face it, you've got a lot of money saved up from the weekend, because they were big bills for me and Michael.
It's funny. I'm like the ultimate Neanderthal man. I had the 2 nights out early on in the weekend, and then I got McDonald's then on Friday night, and then Saturday night KFC. And
this is what we have to deal with, ladies and gentlemen.
Hang on,
this is what we have to deal with.
It was a decent level, especially KFC, because sometimes you know what the Colonel's recipe's like. It doesn't travel, but it did. It was spot on.
It's nice that you're enjoying the the local culture as well, local food and stuff like that.
That's what I'm all about, Sylvan.
Making an effort.
He's an absolute Philistine, ladies and gentlemen. Right, we're going to take another breather, but when we come back, we're going to be talking rims. Welcome back to Gas It Out, where I needed to get some water in because the sun's turned around while we've been here. Anyone on the video version can see I'm still in central Bangkok, and it is scorching. And now the sun's coming through the windows and it's on my back. And because I've turned the aircon off, I am starting to suffer. 37 degrees it is outside. And it was like that over the racing weekend. And that's going to be something we're going to talk about now. So we're going to talk tyres. And we're going to talk rims. Yes, we haven't descended. This isn't My Dad Wrote a Porno podcast. This is still Gas It Out. And I've still got Neil Hodgson and Sylvain Guinsoli alongside me. Mozza Towers on Twitter. Impressed how quickly Gav called the rim job, to be honest. Best that I read that a little bit slower. But of course, we're talking about what happened with Marc Marquez and his Ducati and the deflation we saw of the rear tire of his bike. There was a really good shot from on side. If you're on the video version, we're showing that right now. The deformation of that wheel rim was pretty drastic, pretty dramatic. I want to know from the pair of you, you both raced for a long, long time. Sylvain, you're still going. You're in endurance where you're going for 24 hours. It's something I've seen. I've definitely seen a crack rim. We saw it on Saturday with Jorge Martinez front. They reckon had a little push in it, and that helped, bring the tire pressures down. Is it something that either of you have experienced at any point in your career? I'll start with you, Silva.
No, I've not experienced it, but it makes sense. So, as in like those Misano curbs we call, so they've appeared on most of the tracks now, and they are here to stop the riders, taking advantage of going wide and using a bit more of the track, a bit more than what they should use. So, those Misano curbs are in that turn 4 where Marc Marquez destroyed that wheel, and they are very sharp. The way they work is that they have like some kind of triangle. There's a triangle bit that sticks out quite a bit, and it's very aggressive. So if you go there when you ride, and I've ridden on them on many tracks, testing, and they've got them in Le Mans as well now, where you really feel like it's not good at all for the tires or the wheels. You can feel they're very aggressive. And what's happened there is Marc Marquez has gone out of turn 4, really fast. It's a fast turn in third gear. He saw that he was going to go run wide, so he kept leaning. And when you lean the tire, the sidewall of the tire is getting really squished. So you're very close. The rim is very close to the ground. And so he kept speed, kept load on that rear tire to sort of like jump the curb and then come back a little bit later because it's tarmac on the other side. And unfortunately, he just caught that massive Misano curbs, the top of the triangle, right on the rim, and he damaged it. So it was a bit of bad luck. But for sure, those curbs, they're here and they do a good job at keeping you on the track because they are so aggressive. But that kind of stuff can happen. We've seen it in the past as well. I think it was in Qatar in Moto3. There was a couple of riders that crashed because they went over the curb. They're pretty aggressive, and they can do some damage to the bikes. So there is a little bit of a safety issue there. But then the curbs, we've been using them for quite some years now, and they are quite good at sort of like marshalling. They let the riders marshal themselves basically, because you don't normally get an advantage when you jump them.
Yeah, and it takes everything within my being not to snigger every time that we talk about this. Understandably, I feel like Finbar Saunders and his double entendres from Viz magazine on this one. But there were lots of tyre issues during the weekend. We've mentioned this hard casing tyre. It's supposed to deal with the heat, with the temperatures. It was similar like it is currently here in Thailand, 37 degrees more, track temperatures getting towards 60. So they had this heat treatment, and yet still Joan Mir had to retire because down the center of his tire, I've tried to find some imagery of it and I can't find it, unfortunately, but the center of his tire was destroyed. Pecco Bagnaya's tire was destroyed. I wonder, Neil, do you think there's a possibility that, with the fact of how much they were spinning up, with the deformation at the tires, they'll be like chewing gum out there, if that perhaps also plays a part, in Marc Marquez's incident there, because, it's sort of his tire's not working right, and that's why he's running wide as well. And perhaps even the deformation of the tire going through the corner is why the rims made contact with the Misano curb, or is it just one of them things?
Well, I think it's 1 in a million. I think it was so unlucky. But I think Marc, the bit that Marc played a part, normal riders, as you're going to run wide and you're going to hit let's say the highest point of the curb, you know that it's going to really upset the bike. So you naturally stand the bike up so you don't lose control of it. But it was at that point in the race where Marc was closing back in. It was in full attack mode and he didn't want to give up any time. He knew he was running out of time. So I think what's happened is he's run into that fast turn 4 and he's just committed, even though he knows he's going to hit the highest point of the curb. And then add to it everything you both just said, the heat, the way the tyres flexing, the tyres melted. The tyres like chewing gum. Essentially, the rim's already on the deck and then you hit the highest point. But I've never seen it before. We've had these curbs for a while. Like Sylvan, I've ridden over them and they feel awful. They are self-policing. So they are to make the racing safer, to stop people from going over them. But honestly, all in all, I'd say it was a bit of bad luck. Last thing to add with the tyres, I can't believe pretty much everybody after the race had no centre tyre left, no rubber left. You are on the carcass. So I think a part of that is the fact that we had 0 rubber down. It kept raining overnight. So less rubber on the track means less grip. So when you come out of the corners on these MotoGP bikes with 300 brake horsepower, as you go through the gearbox, once it starts spinning, you cannot stop it. It's one of the comments from Top Rack. He said it on a few interviews going, I can't believe how much I'm spinning in a straight line, but that's what they're having to deal with. So maybe in hindsight, you look back, they could have cut the race a little bit shorter, just as a safety issue, because when you're riding around on the carcass, it's not a nice feeling at what's the top speed down to turn 3, 212, just 212 mile an hour. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. I think we were lucky really that no one had a tyre blowout.
Well,
I know
some
Mark-
There was a
riders said
moment that we saw after the race, Sylvan, R1.Maverick on Instagram.
Is that
Go and
Davide
find it.
Tardozzi?
Yeah, the
That's
shot of
Tardozzi.
Davide Tardozzi, that if you
So you're going to
have
check the
got the
naughty
video
curb?
version, you can see him walking out towards turn 4.
Looks angry.
Strutting.
He's not happy, is he? So he
Well,
would
what
have
he does-
gone to see the mark.
so-
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Sylvan. Well, what he does, he did exactly that. That's what he's doing. But then he takes a picture of it, and that was the picture he showed me. He showed me the
Yeah.
picture when we were chatting to say, like, look at the size of the curb, and at the point that Mark hit it, it was sort of almost earlier than where everybody else was hitting it. But honestly, 1 in a million. That I think.
Yeah, it's bad luck.
But
It was one of
you
the
also have to
first...
say, Sylvan, just a word, Sylvan, on it. This, I mean, this is what Davide Tardozzi does. This is passion, isn't it? This is dedication. This is being the team manager. This is backing your rider. This is, there's so much. I think it's an amazing bit of footage. That,
Well, there was,
you know, this says a lot about
did-
Davide, doesn't it, as a person?
Mm-hmm.
No, he did show us the picture when we were with him after the race. And this, why he's doing that, Davide, he's doing this because when something happens to you as a rider on track, whether it's a crash or it's a mechanical or anything that happens during a race or a test session, you want to understand what happened and you want to move on. You want to close the chapter as soon as possible. You don't want to have any doubts, as in, are the rims that we are using solid enough, or is there a problem with the tires or anything like that? So Davide Tardozzi, as a team manager there, he's going to get some evidence, and he's come back in the box, show the team, show Marc Marquez, look, this is your mark. This is what's happened. You got unlucky. Look at his mark at the top of that curb there. This was 1 in a million.
Yeah,
it's bad. It's bad. We're losing some points today, but let's put that behind us. There is nothing wrong with the bike or with the wheels or with the tires, and we can just move on. And that's what Davide is doing there. But yeah, he just showed the passion, because I mean, it's not at the other end of the track, but it's a good 300-400 meters out of his way, where he's going to cross the track, climb find a way like through the barriers, and to go and get the evidence. And he did show us that, and he was like, there was actually like a big black mark right on the top of that curb. So it was just bad luck.
Anything to add to that, Neil, on that one?
No,
maybe we should
totally
talk
agree.
about the tyres then. And you mentioned there the spinning up top rack. Obviously, Honda, that condition. Drummer wasn't actually having a bad race, was he? I think he was doing okay in the opening race, considering they were having that spinning up issue, and that caused his tyre to effectively delaminate down the central tread. But just on Yamaha, you mentioned a little bit top rack there. What did you make of Yamaha's weekend at the end? They didn't even send any of the riders up for debrief. Paolo Pavesio, the team, the director of Yamaha Motor Racing, went and spoke. But I have to say, right, am I wrong in thinking I don't think it was that disastrous of a weekend? The sprint time was pretty similar to the year before. The race time was only 8 seconds. I know, only 8 seconds, but slower than it was Jack Miller the previous year, Fabio Quartararo this year, sorry. And I don't know, on a brand new bike, effectively, on a really tricky conditions, in tricky circumstances as well. Top rack outdoing Jack Miller in the end. Unsurprisingly, Jack had tyre issues at the end of the race. It's something we've come to expect. So if he's going to have them, he's going to have them exacerbated even more. I don't know. Neil, what do you think? What do you think about Yamaha's weekend?
It was as expected. It's what we'd seen in all the pre-season testing. We'd heard all the riders' comments after all the testing. So, yeah, there were no major surprises. I thought Top Rack looked uncomfortable on Friday and improved so much throughout the weekend. In fact, in the sprint race, when he crashed out, he wasn't that far. I think he was within a couple of seconds of Fabio Quartararo. So, Top Rack really impressed me. What can you expect? And for the riders not to do any interviews after the race, and Paolo Pavesio, that was his decision as the team manager. I don't think it was a bad decision to do that, because what do you expect the riders to say? Because there's not a worse feeling when everyone's still giving 100%, but when you're sort of battling for last, it's not ideal. So yeah, it was as expected. We know they're going to have a long season, but this is part of the journey. It weirdly could have been worse. I was sort of thinking that, so it wasn't an absolute nightmare.
That's really what I'm getting at, really.
Yeah.
I think I expected so much worse, and actually, it's not the end of the world. Have either of you got anything to add on to MotoGP before we just have a quick look at Moto2 or Moto3?
Yeah,
You happy with everything, Silvan?
Sorry, can I just? I'd like to add. I thought Diogo Moreira was outstanding. Moreira, was he 13th in the end?
Scoring points on his debut. When did it take Somkiat Chantra? Was it till halfway season last year? Way through the season?
Yeah, it took a while, didn't it? So for Moreira, and if you look at the race time, it was only 5 seconds behind the top Honda. I mean, we all rate Diogo Moreira anyway, but in those conditions on a MotoGP bike for the very first time, what I mean by weird conditions, it's horrible. I thought he fared really well. I thought quite an outstanding performance.
Silvan, anything else for you to add to MotoGP?
No, I mean, except we said we were going to keep an eye on the Vinales Lorenzo working duo. Well, that didn't work. I mean, not for that race anyway. That was for Vinales, that was a really difficult weekend. He said he had no feel. He kept running wide, and really, really struggled. And when you see, in contrast, what Pedro Acosta was able to do, or Brad Binder. I mean, Bastianini struggled as well, but Vinales was really in difficulty this weekend. So at the moment, it's not working. It's not to say that but we said we're going to keep a track on it. So here's the update for the weekend. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'm sticking by. I can't see that relationship still being intact by Jerez. That's my prediction.
Couple of other things to point out. There was that practice start from Fabio Quartararo. I thought that had shades of a Vinales a little bit at one point when he kept the burnout rolling after his practice start down to the first corner. I was like, all right, don't go on too much on that one. I was pretty worried that might turn into a Maverick Vinales in Austria on that occasion. But another one that you told me about, and I clipped it up on X, was Alex Rins, Neil, and just the physical exertions on the MotoGP riders that they went through in the conditions. If the tyres were struggling, the riders were too.
Yeah, and just a graphic example, when we're commentating, we always talk about heart rate, how much effort is involved in racing a modern MotoGP bike. But when you throw into the mix 37 degrees ambient temperature, 60 degrees track temperature, the physicality of that, and I mean, it demonstrates it. Alex Rins, who you might think's not really given 100%. Trust me, he is. He's battling there on the Yamaha, obviously not in shot, not on TV. I mean, his average heart rate for the race was 183. He peaked at 205, and he's a fit individual, like they all are. But I challenge anyone to go to their local gym, get on a treadmill, and see how long you can run for. At last, with your heart rate in the 180s, see how long you can last for. Because I tell you what, it's not easy at all. And have a go at getting into the 200s, because I know a lot of the riders now, that's where they're at. And at that point, you become anaerobic. Your body's working against itself. Your muscles are, the lactic uptake in your muscles, you're getting spasms, and it is horrendous. I can't emphasize how difficult it is. And I just thought that was quite interesting to see from Rins.
Yeah, definitely. It was struggle. I won't be trying to do that in the gym. I'll just stick to my easy little runs here and there, a bit of cycling and that, and then I know I've been doing a fair bit over the last year that I struggle when it gets that high.
Gav, all joking apart, so you're 40. I know what are you now? 46, 47,
23. It is. Yeah.
So and I know you've been doing a bit of training. Well done, by the way. You're looking good. What can you max? Like what could you see? Like training wise, could you get your heart up to? Could you hit 200? Do you think?
No. My ceiling. My ceiling is about that 180, and that's my ceiling. And that's when you're struggling. It's got a bit better, I have to say.
Exactly. You wouldn't want to sit at that heart rate, would you?
No.
For 40 minutes.
Well, I've been doing a lot of spin classes, and I struggle. There's people in it though who are absolute demons, that I'm doing it with. Yeah. But I'm there's no way. There's no way. Anyway, let's move on to other people that we can talk about their fitness as well. Moto2, two big crashes. Sergio Garcia involved in one. But the big one, of course, was David Alonso. That moment for Senna just brought out the first of the red flags in the incident. And I'm so pleased to say we saw him, didn't we, in the airport on Sunday night in Buriram. Okay, he didn't look fine. He was hobbling about, but no brakes, nothing. So pleased to report that David Alonso, okay after that one. He posted on Instagram as well. Is a star in the making, but no points for him. Meanwhile, last year's runner-up, Sylvain, Manuel Gonzalez, in that 7-lap shootout in the end. I'm not saying it played into his hands, but, you know, he was a bit further back in the first part of the race. He was a little bit further back, you know, a little bit closer in the second restart, and then going on to take victory in that. Sylvain, what did you make of Manu?
Yeah, great. I mean, he did.
Why are you smiling, Neil? Come on, explain.
We're nearly smiling because he won his bet, and I'm yet to settle the bet.
I'm well aware of this fact, Mr. Gintoli.
No, it's not going to go away. This one, it's not going to go away. I had Olgado because Olgado was super strong, and actually in the 2 first starts, Olgado looked like he was going to win the race. He looked comfortable, but I think what's happened is he didn't have a tire for the 3rd start, as in like he didn't have any more new tires, and so Gonzalez got home with the win.
You had something on that, Neil, didn't you? On the tire that Manuel Gonzalez had, your old crew member Fausto, who's the
Fausto
crew chief.
It's so interesting. So I spoke to Fausto, who's Manu Gonzalez's crew chief, and we're walking back, and he was first race of the year. Your rider's just won, especially with what happened last year. He was ecstatic, and I put my arm around him, and I went, "Hey, you should be proud. Obviously, it's a team effort." He went, "Yeah, let me tell you, it was a team effort because we'd saved a front tire and a rear tire for the restart." And he said, "I know most of the teams not only did they not have a new rear to put on, but certainly not a new front." And he said, "We were well aware of how many laps the race was reduced to, so we siphoned as much fuel out of the bike as we can." And he went, "Do you know what? It might have only been an extra 2 kilos, but that's what makes the difference."
And it's funny the trading there. That is for you.
This is after. Well, hang on.
Was it after?
Sylvain, this is after the podium. Inside. This was after the podium. This was after the.
So
victory.
You want to see his crew chief got all the info,
FSA
and then came back to me and said, "Hey, guess what? Who have you got on? Because I've got Gonzalez."
Why did you think I said let's have a grand on it? It wasn't.
He did well,
£10.
Yeah, he
did well. And it just shows. It just shows. We talk about that team in general, and we talk about lots of teams, but that's the difference. That's the quality. Because they don't. How many laps have they done? Three or four laps. So you've got a sighting lap, a warm up lap, 3 or 4 laps, an in lap. Now, if you didn't have a new rear tire, then they had the second restart, sighting lap, warm up lap. Obviously, red flag straight away. By the time you're actually on that start line, if you didn't have any fresh tires, you would be looking at having done nearly 12 laps on your tires, so you can see the difference.
And the tires go multiple heat cycles as well. Like you go out, in, out lap, in laps. They don't normally like it, especially when it's hot like that. Normally it's best to go just in one go. So yeah, he had an advantage, but he did. Yeah, they did well. He did well as a rider, and obviously the team did a great professional job there.
And a quick word on Moto3, because obviously the team did it in Moto3 with David Almanza, 0.003 of a second across the line, beating Max Quiles. Quiles was great, but in the end, Almanza, you have to say, that moved down to the final corner. Probably a little bit controversial how much he closed the door, because Max Quiles was almost forced onto the grass. So a bit more controversy there. But look, Almanza promised so much last year to come through and win, and actually then have the wherewithal to do the cutback and win by 3 thousandths. It was a good Moto3 opener as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've got something to add to that as well, because obviously I speak to Simon Cray for quite a bit. Simon said that was as borderline as it'll get as well, without it being a penalty. There's one thing, if you didn't see the race, but basically as you're heading down towards the last corner, Almanza's leading. He's got the wily fox of Max Quiles behind him. He knows Max Quiles is going to try and position himself to the inside. So Almanza completely blocked. He went from one side of the track to the other, pretty much to the curb, to the white line, knowing full well that Quiles was potentially there, and it basically blocked him off. It won him the race, don't get me wrong. It was closest ever finish we've seen in Moto3, but it was borderline. But he's been told now, basically, he's been warned. He's been, if you do that again, you'll probably be losing a position or two. So great race though, and I was really pleased for Almanza.
Yeah, it was a fantastic opening weekend across the classes, I felt. Of course, the other race we haven't mentioned was the tuk-tuk race. And what we found over the racing weekend is that this is the partnership that we are living for in MotoGP. Top Jack were just superb at that moment. It wasn't just that moment. It was in the launch in Kuala Lumpur. We already were teeing it up, weren't we, at the start of the season, Sylvain? But this is a partnership that is going to engage people in MotoGP this year, Sylvain. What do you reckon?
It's entertaining. I mean, does it get any better than that? Jack Miller at the back of the tuk-tuk in Crocs, helping Toprak to wheelie the bloody thing. I mean, really? I was surprised that by the end of that lap, and it wasn't just them, they were the worst, but it wasn't just them. I was surprised that nobody got hurt because they were going on two wheels. If you looked at all the images, it's like, oh, this could go wrong really quickly. But they managed to not crash, but it was entertaining. We had people going across the grass to try, because they actually did a race. Wheeling, stopping on the track, doing handbrakes and so on. So it was entertaining. It was, put it that way, it was much better than normal rider parade, which I don't really like. They put them at the back of the trailer, and it's a bit. I found that a bit weird.
It's a bit weird.
This was spot on. Yeah, really enjoyed that.
Right, I think that's about all we've got from Gas It Out this week. I don't know whether you guys have got anything to add. I want to remind people at the home, though, you can contact us at Gas It Out Pod on Instagram, on YouTube comments. Remember to subscribe, comment on the back catalogue. Don't forget that. Go on. Well, no, I mean, I'm still not finished yet. Don't you worry about it, Neil. We've got a couple of other bits. The links are all there on our Gas It Out Pod on Instagram to the various streams on Apple, Spotify. There's a link, importantly, Neil, though, we wanted to add to Sylvain's fundraiser, of course, because one thing we want to talk about is that Sylvain is going to be running the London Marathon in his leathers. And I have to say, it was a lovely touch to see Sylvain show those leathers to us over the racing weekend. And Sylvain, you also got to pose for a photo with all the MotoGP runners. The link to the fundraiser that you're for raising money for Pazik in the London Marathon is in the bio. We'll try and put it on screen as well. But it was, how cool was that, Sylvain, for you? There's a QR code on screen on the video version if you want to get straight to our Instagram feed. And as I say, on there is the link to Sylvain's fundraiser for his beautiful son, Luca. And I have to say, Sylv, I teared up at it. I know you were choked up as well, unsurprisingly, of course. But how nice was that for you to have that moment with the MotoGP runners and then supporting you in it?
It was lovely. That MotoGP invited me on the grid on Thursday with all the riders and to unveil that custom leather suit, and it's a special one, obviously, because of the event and raising the money for this charity that help children and their families with cancer. They've been really supportive to us when everything was going on, and it was pretty special. That suit as well is brilliant. I love it. So I'm really happy that RST was able to do that design. We were able to have a Sonic the Hedgehog as well on the suit. Sonic was Luca's favorite character. He loved Sonic. He used to watch Sonic all the time. So having Sonic on the suit feels great. To honor Luca's memory. So it's going to be an emotional event, but I was really happy to be able to do that in Thailand, and hopefully we can raise some important funds and awareness for this fantastic charity, because they're great people.
Yeah, that is all words that we can't echo anymore. The other thing I need to get across, Neil Hodgson, I just want to make sure now you're home. Has your wife made you a beef carpaccio at all? Because I know on the flight on the way over to Thailand, I was in economy, and then we were discussing with a couple of people in the paddock, weren't we, about what it was like for you traveling. Was it a private jet? I can't remember what it was, but you had a problem, didn't you? You had a real problem heading over to Thailand. Apparently the beef carpaccio wasn't up to scratch on Thai
First class carpaccio.
Yeah.
What
Gav,
happened,
you're a
Neil?
Gav, you're a wanker. Can I say
All
that?
right, all right, Jack Miller.
I've got to say, it was so funny because it was so embarrassing. We were just chatting, weren't we, about the flight? And do you know when you say something? This weirdly happens to me a lot, and I thought, oh no, I can't ever take that back because Gav's face. Gav said something like, "Oh, what was it like anyway? What was your flight like out?" And I went, "Oh my god, the beef carpaccio was bloody awful." And he's like, "Oh, you absolute knob." So then I saw him getting his phone, making a note of that, and I thought, I'm in trouble here. But hey, hang on a minute. I wasn't the only one to make a fool of myself. At least me doing that, I made a fool of myself in front of you and a few other people. But what happened to you on Sunday night, Gav? I mean, talk about having a complete and utter nightmare. Obviously, the weekend had finished. Here he is.
I've got to take my bag. I've got to do the full-on body search. Don't sit next to me.
Holding the whole plane
as
up.
well. You said it was coffee, mate.
So basically, the story, I mean, it's just incredible. The whole paddock is on that flight. That's a chartered flight from Buriram to Bangkok. It left at 7 p.m. So it's a massive rush. The MotoGP race finishes, we finish, everyone packs up, and you rush to the airport. It's full of teams, riders, MotoGP riders. We all get on the plane, and we're waiting. We're like, we should have taken off about 15 minutes ago. Then it was like half an hour ago. And then they come walking down the plane. Mr. Emmett. Are you Mr. Emmett? You should have seen Gav. I've never seen him go so red. So then they're like, have you got a power bank in your bag? And Gav's like, I don't know. So he has to get off the plane. They eventually have to search his bag. They find this power bank. And obviously that was Gav walking back on the plane. He got some stick for it. But what a mare he had. Not only that, I mean, that was embarrassing, but this was the most Gav thing. We went through security together and they stopped Gav's bag, opened it up, and he'd forgot to put his sun cream. So he got basically a tube of sun cream, which they took off him. You would think they'd taken $1,000 off him. He was kicking off, crying. It was devastating.
Was he trying to put the sun cream on?
Literally.
It was £20.
You was honestly, Gav, your face. So yeah, you had a bad end to your Sunday, didn't you?
I did. Anyway, enough of that. Right, at Gas It Out Pod on Instagram. Cheers for that, Neil. Thanks for bringing it to everyone's attention. A reminder, we want to hear from you, your comments. We are going to do a Q&A episode next up. So get your questions into us at Gas It Out Pod. Send them to either of us as well, myself, at Gavin and Neil, at Sylvain Gintoli, or at Neil Hodgson. You can send us those across the various social media platforms. And we'll be back with you soon enough. We want your opinions. We want your take on the penalties. We want your take on anything that we might have said as well. And also links in that bio to Sylvan's fundraiser too. For now, though, from myself here in Thailand, hopefully soon back in the UK. From Neil Hodgson back in the UK, and from Sylvain Gintoli, also at his chateau. We'll see you soon. If in doubt, gas it out.